Hey there, and welcome back to the Happiness Hack with Tim Coulson. I am so glad you're here. If you've been tuning in, then you'll know that this is a space where we get curious about how our brain works, how our mindset shapes our world, and how small, practical shifts can lead to big changes in how we feel and how we live. This podcast is about exploring happiness in a way that's grounded in science, but also makes sense. Happiness isn't just something we think about on holidays or when everything's going perfectly. It's something we can cultivate day by day, even in the middle of real life with all its mess and challenges. So today I want to dive into a big question. What actually makes us happy? What's the science behind happiness? What helps us not just survive, but actually thrive? Because happiness isn't random. It's not just luck. It's not only about life going smoothly. There are patterns, principles, and habits that we can help keep us grounded, more connected, and more alive. So the good news is that they are available to all of us. Because happiness isn't one of those words that we all just use. It means something different to different people. If you ask 10 people what happiness is, you'll probably get 10 different answers. For one person, happiness is sitting by the beach with a coffee, watching the sunrise. For another, it's climbing the mountains or chasing adventures. For someone else, it's having a sense of security, being surrounded by family or friends. Maybe it's even just curling up with a good book. So, how do we talk about happiness in a way that actually makes sense across all of these differences? Let's zoom in on what science tells us happiness is about. Because here's the thing, happiness isn't just one thing. Psychologists have found that there are actually two kinds of happiness that we all experience. The first kind is what I'm going to call feel-good happiness. This is the lighter side, the quick wins, the comforts, the little bursts of joy. It's eating your favourite meal, hearing your favourite song, laughing until your cheeks hurt, or curling up under that blanket. That's feel-good happiness. The second is what we're going to call deep happiness. This is the kind that comes from meaning and purpose. It's the satisfaction you get when you're working on something that matters, when you're helping someone else, when you're growing, learning, or creating. It's what you feel when your life lines up with your values. Now, I'm not just pulling this idea out of thin air. This comes from decades of psychological research, from way back in the 1990s, when people like Dr. Happiness and later Martin Seligman, the founder of positive psychology, studied what really makes people thrive. What they discovered is that feel-good kind of happiness makes life enjoyable. But the deep kind is what makes life meaningful. Now, this wasn't just one study. These findings have been replicated across the world, from United States to Europe to Japan. No matter the culture, this pattern shows up. People feel most fulfilled when they have a balance of both kinds of happiness. So let me put this into real life for you. I know someone who absolutely lives for the holidays. Every year they show up, book a big trip, and then share the photos online. Now, don't get me wrong, those trips make them happy for a while. But within a few weeks of being back, that spark fades. They're restless again. They're going back to scrolling and dreaming of the next holiday. That's feel-good happiness in action. It's wonderful, but it doesn't stick around. Compare that to a friend of mine who spends every Saturday at the community garden. It's not glamorous. No one's posting the selfies about it, but she'll tell you it's the most fulfilling part of her week because she's connecting with people. She's giving back. She's part of something bigger than herself. That's deep happiness. And the beautiful thing about deep happiness is it lasts. Here's the takeaway. We need both. Pleasure makes life sweet. Purpose makes life rich. And when we weave them together, that's when we thrive. So the science gets fascinating behind this because researchers have found that we all seem to have something called a happiness set point. It's like our emotional baseline, the level you naturally drift back to after life's highs and lows. Let's say you win the lottery. For a while, you're going to be on cloud nine, but within a year or two, most people's happiness levels drifts back towards that baseline. On the flip side, when you go through something really difficult, like facing an illness or losing a job, after the initial shock and adjustment, people's happiness levels creeps back up towards that baseline. Now, this doesn't mean circumstances don't matter. Of course they do. But the research shows us that happiness isn't only about what's happening outside us. It's also about what's happening inside us. This is what we know. The pleasure makes life sweet. The purpose makes life rich. So what we want to do is blend them together. Now, you might be wondering, is happiness just about luck then? Are some people born happier than others? But it is something we can truly shape. Psychologists break it down like this. Around 50% of our happiness is influenced by our genetics. Some of us are naturally wired to be a little sunnier, others a little bit more cautious. This is that baseline mood or temperament we're born with. Now, this finding was backed up by twin studies in the late 1980s. They studied thousands of twins and discovered that even when twins were raised apart, their happiness levels were strikingly similar. This is where the idea of the happiness set point first came in, the emotional resting place we return to after the highs and lows of life. About 10% of our happiness comes from circumstances, things like the job title, our income, where we live. That's the surprising part. Research and studies show that while circumstances like wealth or health can shift the dial a bit, it's usually far, far less than we think. Think of those lottery winners. Yes, they're thrilled at first, but within a year or two, they're back at that baseline. This just comes back to adaptation. It's our ability to get quickly used to new situations, whether they're good or bad. Now, what about that remaining 40%? This is our golden zone. This is the part that is shaped by our daily thoughts, habits, and behaviours. The things we do, often without realising, steer our happiness. The intentional activities like gratitude, kindness, relationships, reframing those challenges make a powerful difference. We've seen this echoed in the Harvard study of adult development. It's tracked people for over 80 years. The studies found one factor stood out above all else. The quality of our relationships was the strongest predictor of both happiness and long-term health. Now, let me be clear, researchers don't agree on the exact percentages. There's no strict formula. But what they do agree on is a huge chunk of our happiness is within our control. No matter the genetics, no matter the circumstances, we can grow. I once knew someone who thought upgrading their life was the key to happiness. They got the bigger house, the newer car, the fancier job, and yes, it felt amazing at first. But after a few months, that shine wore off. They were restless again, wondering why they didn't feel happy as they thought they would. On the flip side of that, I do know someone who focuses on the small daily challenges. They choose to take a morning walk. They choose to check in with a friend. Nothing flashy, nothing big, but it's those small moments. They've built lasting happiness. Here's that big takeaway, guys. Happiness isn't luck. It's not just about the next promotion, the next holiday. It's something you shape every single day. So what makes us really happy? And I'll tell you, it's not what we think. If we go by what society tells us, the ads, the social media, the reels we see every day, you think happiness comes from having more success, more stuff, more followers, a better job, a bigger house, a newer car, that perfect body. We are constantly bombarded with messages that happiness lives externally, at the top of some ladder that we have to climb. That once we finally get there, we're going to get our promotion, we're going to hit a certain number in our bank account, or we're going to own something shiny and new, then we're going to be happy. One of our most basic needs isn't being met though. Those external things don't actually add that much happiness. They do give us a little bump. Sure, that new phone feels great for a couple of weeks. A pay rise makes life easier, but then we adapt. We get used to the new thing and we're back to chasing something else. It's not just stuff or status that makes the difference. Research keeps pointing to three big things: connection, purpose, and mindset. Strong relationships are the number one predictor of happiness. Remember that Harvard study of adult development? It showed that good relationships keep us happier and healthier. It's not money, it's not fame or achievements, it's connection. And it doesn't mean you need hundreds of friends. It's about the quality, not the quantity. Having a few people you can really rely on, people who know you and accept you as you are, that's what makes us thrive. Because we are wired to want to live lives that matter. So purpose is the sense that comes from doing something that counts. It might come through raising our kids, caring for loved ones, creating something, or working in a way that aligns with our values. Purpose gives us direction. It pulls us forward. And then there's our mindset, the way we interpret and respond to the world around us. Remember, our brains are wired to survive. They're always scanning for danger, for problems, which is useful if you're in the jungle and a tiger might jump out and eat you. But in everyday life, it leaves us stuck in negativity, stress, worry. Positive psychology shows that we can actually train our brains to notice the good, to practice gratitude and focus on what's working rather than only what's not. When we do, our sense of happiness expands. Let's bring this back to what we're talking about. We have a 40% influence over our happiness. So here's 3 happiness hacks I want you to try this week. First, write down 3 good things. Every night before you go to bed, jot down 3 things that worked well today. They can be tiny. Your coffee was really good. Someone held the door open for you. Over time, this practice rewires your brain to scan for the positives. Number 2, invest in connection. Pick up and focus on one meaningful connection this week. Have a distraction-free dinner with your partner. Go for a walk with a colleague. Phone that friend. It's not about the number of connections, it's the depth. The final thing, find one small way to contribute. Help a neighbour, check in on someone, volunteer your time. Find a purpose. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It's built into your everyday acts of meaning. Let me share some real-life examples. One client I worked with was convinced that a promotion would make them happy. They worked for it. They got it, and they were thrilled. The celebrations were there. There was a sense of validation. But within a few weeks, that buzz wore off, the stress grew, the workload piled up, and they were back to their old baseline. It didn't make a lasting difference because it wasn't the promotion. It was learning to connect more with their values, to spend time with people they love, and to build pride in themselves. The title, the promotion, was the noise. The shift was in happiness. So, what makes us thrive? It's not that promotion or the shinier car or a highlight reel on social media. We thrive when our basic needs are solid, when we're connected to people who matter, when we're living with purpose, and when we train our brains to notice the good that's already there. That's the science of happiness. And the beautiful thing is, it's not out of reach. It's not a secret club. It's built into the small daily choices we make. So, before we wrap up today's episode, let me remind you of your happiness hack for the week. Once a day, practice reframing. When it works, what I want you to do is take something stressful or frustrating that's happened. It could be just being stuck in traffic or an email that you read that made you tense. Pause for a moment and ask yourself, what else could this mean? Is there another way to see this? What could I learn here? Now, I'm not saying sugarcoat everything. Life can be tough and frustration is real, but reframing helps you shift your brain out of autopilot. It gives you a little more space between what happens and how you respond. Think of it this way. If you spill coffee on your shirt before a meeting, you can say, great, today's ruined. Or you can say, well, that was clumsy, but hey, now I've got a funny story to break the ice. Same event, different story. The story chooses how you feel. So that's your happiness hack this week. Once a day, take that moment and reframe it. Because happiness isn't just about what happens to us. It's about that story we tell ourselves. Thanks for tuning into today's episode of The Happiness Hack with Tim Coulson. If this resonated with you, I'd love for you to subscribe, leave a review, or share it with someone who might need that little lift today. And if you're ready to make some real, positive change, then jump online and book a session with me by going to my website, tim-coulson.com, because happiness isn't about having it all together. It's about building something better. One thought, one habit, one moment at a time. I am so glad we're doing this together. I'll see you next time. And until then, remember, the day is what you make it.